Check, check, 1, 2. Okay, I know this is not going to sound as good. Is that a Creality mic? No, it's actually a Russian one. Let's see here. The hell? Oh, someone frickin' trolled me. Hang on. Turn my phantom power off. Somehow my output level got turned all the way down. There's nothing wrong with the microphone. Hang on, let me switch back over to not the terrible quality headset mic. Sound like air traffic control. It is a Corsair headset. Can you guys hear me at all? Hello? Is it working now? Can you guys hear me? Hello? All right, hopefully this is working. Okay. I have no idea what was going on there. I'm wondering if I don't think it was the mic itself. I think it was the Behringer XLR that I'm using. Let's see, turn it up a little bit. Check, check, check. 1, 2. We're in the yellow. We want to be right in the yellow. How's that? Is that sounding good now? Is that better? Put my levels up a little bit. I really gotta check my mic before I go live. So, anyways, it wouldn't be a stream without something screwing up, and I'll take the microphone being one of those issues. Let's see. I want to hear how it sounds on my end. Let me watch myself. Check, check, 1, 2. Let's see. Let's see. I want to hear how it sounds on my end. Let me watch myself. Sounds a little hot. Made it a little hot. All right. Okay, that's better. So, anyways, yeah, we're using an XLR here. So I don't think it's the mic. I'm wondering if this Behringer box is going out. It's just a USB powered one. I bought it on a recommendation from a buddy of mine. It's been doing pretty well. So, anyways, yeah, the bot should be up and running. Everything seems to be working. I do have an update because last week we were dealing with air conditioning unit issues in our shop, and then my house air conditioning went out. So I have been learning about HVAC. I told you not to buy a big TrueTech microphone. Well, I mean, if it did, it would have gone out months ago. So if they had made it. But I do have an update on that. So the shop one, we have a portable unit going. Yeah, it's still down, but if you guys have these Mr. Cool DIY units, and oh my god, their customer service is terrible, like absolutely terrible. The only reason I actually was able to get in touch with somebody is I went through all the reviews on Home Depot for these particular units and noticed that their customer service reps were leaving direct emails to certain people within the organization. So I aggregated all these email addresses that I found in the responses to reviews. They're also on, I have a personal website that I post whatever. It's, my personal site. It's not affiliated with the business. So I talk about whatever I want on there. But one of these things is highlighting issues with companies like these. So if you guys are having a Mr. Cool unit and you have issues, go check out my website. It's just myname.com, timothyhoagland.com. And I've compiled a list of the emails and phone lines and extensions that I found. And basically, I just blasted out all the emails, and someone finally got back to me. So their phone line's useless, their contact form's useless. It just creates a ticket, and that's it. Nobody actually gets back to you. But luckily, the tech, and I told him this is the problem, is, he was very apologetic. He said, basically, they don't have enough people to keep up with the demands. I told him, well, as somebody that runs a company that actually cares about our customers, we make sure that if we do have delays, we communicate them that, hey, we might be a couple days behind on tickets. Just whether that's a post on our blog or in our automated responses our ticket system sends out, or if there's an issue that needs more investigation, we just communicate with the customer saying, hey, give me a couple days to look into this, which doesn't really happen. But the point is communicating with your customers. Like most people, including myself, don't really care that we get an immediate resolution. We just want to know that our ticket and our phone calls or whatever are not going into a black hole and just not getting read. Just sending something back, and then also telling your customers that, hey, someone will contact you today, and then they don't do that, also looks bad. And then you go and look up reviews of the company, and you see, all these review sites where other people are having the same exact experience, and it just leaves you feeling, well, great, I'm just screwed. So I will show you what they found on the unit, and I was working with the technician, and I can't remember his name, but he was actually good. He has to work within his limitations of things. But this is on the line set here, and This is on the outdoor unit, and you can see right here where the swivel portion of their plunger fitting, they call it, which it's actually patented. So this is like their own design. It's a plunger fitting. So when you put them in it, they both ends seal up. The fitting failed. So there's O-ring here, which I have 3 of these units. So it's a little concerning to me that after 3 years, this has failed. Now, the good thing is, it looks like these can be replaced. They are sending me a new indoor unit, which means I'm gonna have to take the whole unit off the wall on the inside, pull all the line set in. Luckily, they don't want it back, so I think what I'm going to do is just keep the new one they send me as a spare because I have 2 of these units. And all that's happening right now is we have a leak right here at this bottom fitting. Now, if you look here, if you guys know anything about HVAC units, this is actually an adapter to go from the standard flare fitting, okay, to their quick connects. So I have extra length on the line set. I've got a couple feet. So I'm actually going to cut the line set. Cody, if you're watching, oh yeah, he is. Cody's here. So he's sending me out a flare tool so I can actually flare these fittings out. I have to go measure the line set tube size. I think it's 3/8 and 3/4 based on what I saw, but I'm actually going to measure them. And I'm basically going to get rid of these. I'm going to take these adapters off here and just completely get rid of them. But you can see in their patent, which I'm trying to find where that is. Discord. Is that going to open on this window? No, of course not. So if we look at the patent here, this is what is on those units. So this illustration here is actually this piece right here to go from your standard flare fitting to their plunger type fitting. And you can see in the diagram here, it's a standard flare fitting. And this is what goes onto the outdoor unit. And you can see here the plunger assembly. So basically, this side didn't spring a leak. It was the connections side where the actual lines go, which is this guy here. So somewhere in here, in this area, I think it's right here because this looks like it's a swivel. You can see right here, I'm assuming, I think these were like O-rings here. So I'm pretty sure that these O-rings right here blew out, and that's where I lost the refrigerant. So basically what's happening right now is one side of the unit is getting cold and icing up because it's low on refrigerant. I have the unit off right now. So I'm basically going to just cut this end off, unscrew those other ones, and never have to worry about these stupid quick connects leaking again. Now, I don't know how common this is. I have 3 of these units, and I'm going to go check the other ones when I get some time, which is kind of a joke in itself. But anyways, because if I see any sort of leaking, I'm just going to seal off the system, evacuate it, and get rid of them. So luckily, I have or will have refrigerant soon because I have a buddy who's an HVAC that is getting me refrigerant. I also have a recovery pump, a recovery tank, a manifold gauge set, and a vacuum pump to vacuum the lines down. And then Cody's sending me a flare tool, is going to give me a hand over video call while I do all this because he's actually an HVAC person. So yeah, I'm pretty confident that these are just threaded on adapters. You can see the threads, not in this picture, but on the unit, you can see that these are just threaded on, and just the fact that the patent actually shows a flare fitting tells me that we can probably just take these off. So hopefully I'll be able to get my pliers on there, pull that adapter off. I'm gonna close the service ports off and then get that adapter off. So yeah, I'm learning about HVAC stuff. It's actually not that complicated. It's just knowing what to do, in terms of like checking your pressures, having the right equipment. So, now I have basically all the equipment I should need to repair these units, my main unit. And the other thing too is my main unit in my house the next day, so Thursday, our house air conditioning just stopped working literally the next day. So it was like 85 in my house. It was miserable. And that luckily ended up being the stupid old school fuses. It had these time delay fuses in there. I'm trying to see if I have a picture of them. I thought I did. Actually, the fuse was in here. Where is it in my abyss of a desk? I have to clean up. But anyways, it was these big honking fuses, and they were there since the house was new. So basically, the AC unit is 7 years newer than the house. It's only 12 years old, and it's a big train system, a 3.5-ton system, and it's a nice system. So what happened was when they put the new unit in, the old one probably specified that it had to have fuses. Okay, so they just left. So they put a fuse disconnect in. Well, the thing is, if you have an outdoor unit that specifies max breaker size or max fuse size, like there's a breaker slash fuse size, and it says HVACR on it, you can use a breaker to protect the AC unit. You don't have to have fuses. So the problem is those two fuses, they wear out over time, and the one fuse looks like it was original. Like it was corroded. It was just like falling apart. Like it was brittle and crusty, and I threw it out. But I checked all my amperages, checked my inrush current, and after replacing the disconnect with the standard disconnect, made sure I have an HVACR breaker in the panel downstairs, which I do, and it fired right up. My run cap tested good. The contactor was worn out, but it still functioned. So I basically overhauled that as well. So I know there's a couple of guys that are in HVAC that watch. So Cody said this looks good, but basically just for preventative measure, I mean, I do the same thing with my own equipment that I do with my printers. I'm just going to fix things and upgrade things before I have an issue. So put in a new cap, put in a new contactor. You can see that here, new contactor, new capacitor. I also replaced some of the crimps because some of these crimps here where the wires were black and loose, meaning they were probably not making good contact. So I went over all the wiring and everything. Anything that was like corroded or just looked bad was replaced. I redid all the wiring here, put a new watertight fitting on here, and also added a hard start kit, which the funny thing is, my unit actually specifies in the manual that is an optional add-on. And I'm assuming they just didn't do it because it was expensive. And I'm trying to find my diagram here. I know I sent it to Cody. Here it is. So this is my diagram here. And I basically added this start kit on, which is a 521 hard start relay, and then a capacitor with a resistor on it. And this basically puts that capacitor in parallel with the run capacitor for about a second when you first turn on the unit. And audibly, the unit sounds a lot smoother starting up. It's not struggling as much, and it brought my inrush current down from about 89 amps to under 40. It's a huge difference. So my lights in the house don't dim anymore. And Cody, I did measure it. I was right around 89 to 90 for the inrush. I disconnected the start kit and tested it before and after, and it cut it down significantly. So, yeah, and Cody tells me this is a good unit. He said I should take care of it, make sure everything's, in good shape. I should get, 20, 30 years out of it. It's only 12 years old. So all this is new. I went over everything. So I'm learning about this stuff. So if you guys have issues with your AC, go on YouTube. There's tons of videos, and, just use common sense. If you don't have common sense or common electrical sense, then I don't recommend you messing with it. But yeah, so I have that fixed. My car's fixed. I have to finish up the sump pump cover project because my sump pumps just get smelly from time to time. Luckily, I haven't seen any of the leak detection dye that my plumber came in and put into the system. So hopefully we don't have a sewer leak. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. So I'm moving along, and hopefully once all the parts show up next week, I can fix the unit in the shop. So. But yeah, Mr. Cool's tech support, they need to redo how they're communicating with customers, and because right now it just feels like they're blowing everybody off. And I'm not the only one that feels that way based on the feedback I've seen on reviews. So, yeah, you guys should probably have somebody sit down and redo how your system is communicating with customers because it's making you guys look absolutely terrible. And after learning about this stuff, and realizing the tools aren't even that expensive, I could have installed a non-DIY unit with standard flare fittings for like
about $1,000 less than I paid for all these, because all I really would have needed to get was possibly a flare tool, if their flares were not that great, and a vacuum pump to vacuum the lines down, because your mini split systems come with the refrigerant in the outdoor unit. They're pre-charged, like in the terms of the outdoor condensing unit. So I was, scared of it. It was, something I never mess with, but doing it again, I'm just going to buy whatever the, cheapest split unit is that has decent reviews, and warranty be damned, I'll fix it myself, because that's basically what I'm doing here. I was hoping they would send out a new unit, but the refrigerant's gone, so I'm going to have an HVAC guy come out and top it off, with refrigerant once I do the line repairs. So yeah, and I'm gonna go check all my other ones since I have all the tools. I'm gonna check all the pressure, the low side, high side pressures, and everything, because why not? Make sure everything is up to snuff. So even though they're all working, I want to make sure they're working at their most efficient. So anyways, that's what I've been working on. Company-wise, we do have the new Tough Hot End V2s in stock. If you guys saw that, we did get those back in. I'll go ahead and just show our website. So also, remembering how frustrated I was that that Slice Engineering on their $200+ hot end didn't include thermal paste that is required on theirs. Ours is optional. I said, what, screw it, we're just gonna include it. So if you buy a hot end from us, the Tough Hot End, it will come with thermal paste for the heat break, so you can improve your heat transfer. So I'll just show that here. So if I go to my main screen again, and it's going to be ranked low. So if you guys are like scrolling on our site, it's going to be low because the default sorting is by popularity. But anyways, so we do have a couple of things, and I'm going to point these out just to make everybody aware of them. We do have thermal paste here, and these are 2 packs, so you'll get this free with the hot end. So if we go to the hot end here, you'll see here we have the hot end itself, and then you're getting the thermal paste free. So it's just going to ship. So if you order it starting today, I just made this change about an hour ago. So if you order stuff now, order a hot end now, it'll come with this. So this is the same hot end we were selling. The difference is we've updated to the new block style. So we have, instead of the old glass thermistor type, we actually have high temp cartridge type thermistor. So the max temp on the old one was 290C. These new ones are up to 320C. And the nice thing is they're still the same 100K thermistor definition in Marlin. So they're the same as your stock thermistor. So you actually don't even need a firmware change if you're going from the stock Reality hot end thermistor to these. So yeah, we got all this stuff. The only thing that's not pictured here is the PTFE tube. There's a basic PTFE tube included. This is new heater block style, so instead of having the little screw on the side here that holds the glass bead in, we have a little set screw here that holds the thermistor cartridge in. So it's a lot easier to install. It includes 2 thermistors. We got 4 nozzles. It includes an all-metal heat break. The PTFE fitting is replaceable. I do like that on these. I wish a lot of the higher-end ones did not have like an integrated fitting. I wish they had one that was replaceable. That's just my personal preference. You do get 4 nozzles, a 0.4 in steel and brass and a 0.6 in steel and brass. You can play around with different nozzle types. You get 12 and 24 volt fans, so it doesn't matter what printer you have. It comes with 12 and 24 volt fans and 12 and 24 volt heaters. So you don't have to worry about, oh man, I bought a 12 volt hot and I got a 24 volt printer. You get both. So yeah, this is what it is. And the new ones here, we actually have the heater cartridges lasered. So if you accidentally, take them out of the bag, or for some reason the bag isn't labeled, the heater cartridges are actually lasered on the cartridge with their wattage and voltage. So yeah. So yeah, that's it. They're back. They're in stock. They're shipping. We also have the silicone socks for them. So if you want to add those on, they are available as an add-on on the hot end page at a slight discount. They're also available separately. And these still work with our Easy Flow copper nozzles, our standard V6 nozzles. They still take the standard V6 nozzles. So, yeah, we also sell the thermistors separately. So if you got a hot end that takes these cartridge type thermistors, like your Slice hot ends, your E3D V6s, I'm blanking out with all the other ones, but if you have one that takes a cartridge type thermistor, we carry these now, and these are the same ones that come with the hot end. These are the 320C 100K NTC type, and I even took pictures here showing you the diameter and length of the cartridge, so you can measure your existing one. If you're not sure if it'll fit, you can compare it to the one here, and if it's, you know, close to this, mainly the diameter here, you know, if you're around 3 millimeters, this will be a replacement for your thermistor. So we have these, and we still have the glass type thermistors, which this is what our old version 1 used. Was these type, and this is what Creality uses. A lot of companies use these, and these are basically the same thermistors. These are just not high temp rated, but they're the same type of thermistor. It's the same idea. It's just a different package. So inside that cartridge, that metal cartridge, is actually a thermistor like this. It's just wrapped up in a cartridge, and it's a slightly different variant for the higher temp. If you do have a V1 hot end kit from us already, and you want to go to the higher temp thermistors, and whether that's you want to use these thermistors or you want to use, like, Slice has their PT1000, which is up to a 500C max temp, you can go ahead and get just the block with 2 of the cartridge thermistors for $17 here. So we have this for anybody that has the V1 hot end or any other V6 style hot end. You know, whether you got it from us or not, this will fit any of the V6 style hot ends that are on the market. So you can go ahead and update this, and this will take the new style silicone socks. So, and we will still be carrying the older style silicone socks for the glass bead thermistor type, but we may not be restocking them once we're out of stock on them. So if you guys have the older version and you want to keep using that block, which is fine, and you're low on socks, because those are a consumable item, I'd recommend grabbing some soon, because we're probably going to discontinue those after a certain point, just because we're not carrying a hot end anymore that uses them. So, and then these are the socks here. These will fit the E3D blocks. These will fit our new tough head-on V6 style blocks. Basically any of the V6 style blocks that have the cartridge thermistor, these will fit. They're just a standard blue, no fancy branding or anything. It's a sock. And the one thing is, it does have the tight grip around the nozzle. If you don't like this, you can actually just trim this off. Depending on the machine, sometimes I do that, sometimes I don't. If I'm changing the nozzle out frequently, I'll usually just take my snips and snip around the edge here and just expose this and still get coverage on the rest of the block. So, but they fit really nicely. So yeah. I think that's all the new stuff. I'm gonna go on my site and sort by new. I think that's all the latest stuff we have right now. I know people were waiting on those. We do have the crimp ferrule kits now. I think I mentioned that last time. And I think that's all the new stuff we have so far. All right. Let's see what questions we have, because that's what we're here for. And I can't find my water bottle, so I'm just using a solo cup. And it's just water. It's not fun juice. All right. So Emerson's asking, have I looked into the 0G Mercury 1 for your Ender 5 Plus? Made a load of difference in print quality. So my 5 Plus is ready to go. I just have to put this back up there. Oh, wait, look at my water bottle's right behind me. Look at that. I actually saw it in my video preview before before Carlos said it's behind me. I did not realize that. The 0G Mercury stuff, we're actually testing those internally right now. We are working right now with Fabrico to get some of those kits in. But again, like all the stuff we sell, we want to make sure that it's good quality and see where there's gaps in documentation. So their quality of the parts is really good, but the 0G Mercury documentation, Tor's been playing with it and upgrading, and he said it's kind of lacking. But anyways, yeah, they look pretty cool. I have one coming for my 5 Plus, so I'm going to be working on this again. Yeah. Let's see. I'm going to refresh our questions here. And Printed Visions 3D, he said, is there a line in the firmware for the Easy Board to have the hot end fan only turn on at 50C? There is not, because that fan is supposed to be wired to a fan header that is on all the time. Now, if you're proficient with Marlin, you can repurpose the second fan header from a controller fan to what would be a hot end fan, but you have one extra fan output on there. Your first fan 1 on that board is for your layer fan, and the second one is for the controller fan, which is the fan in your control box. Now, if you're not using all the input output pins on that board, you could also add on an external MOSFET And we actually have really cheap MOSFETs that are great for this type of application, where you could have another fan output. So if you want to have the controller fan and you also want to have the hot end fan, you can add a simple little MOSFET board, and I'll pull this up. And I use these a lot. Like, we sell these. I got these for a project that we ended up not going through with. So we just have them, but they're great for lower amp loads. They're good for up to, I think, 3 or 5 amps. I'm pulling up the listing here on our site, and they're literally $1. I'm looking here. What is the max average? So it's 3 amps is what we recommend. So certain hot ends you can run off there, but mainly I use these for a lot of DIY projects. I also use them for adding additional fan controls on to printers. So like on the Easy Board, if I wanted to have a hot end fan and also retain the controller fan, I would add this on. And basically, if you're using the same power supply to power the board and power this, you only need to hook up the signal pin. So if you look at this little board here, you see you got SIG, VCC, and ground. I don't know why the manufacturer of this module has the VCC on there, because it doesn't go anywhere. There's actually schematic below, but the ground on here is actually tied to your voltage input. So your power from your power supply will go in here, and then whatever you want to control goes on the V plus and the V minus. These grounds are these two grounds are connected together. So if it's the same ground coming from your power supply, all you actually need is a signal here, and this works on a 3.3 volt and 5 volt logic. So if you're a home automation guy or a project guy that's using ESP or Raspberry Pi, these work with the Pis. If you're an Arduino guy, they work with the Arduinos on the 5 volt logic. And they're literally $1 right now. I've got so many of these. We just have them because I was like, well, they don't really get out of date. It's still going to be a MOSFET 10 years from now, and they're convenient. If you want to get a bunch of them for less than $4, you can get 5 of them, or if you just want one, they're literally $1. So if you look on here, here's a schematic for it, and you can see the VCC is just there for appearances, but the grounds are tied together. So on the Easy Board, I think you said you have a V2. I mean, either way, the V1 and the V2, you have extra I/O pins. One good example, an easy I/O pin, is if you're not using a BL Touch and you're using like an easy ABL, you actually have a free I/O pin on the servo header. So you could connect the signal pin from the servo header to the signal pin on here, wire up your 12 to 24 volts here, put your fan here, and then specify the BL Touch pin as your E auto fan pin. So if I go ahead and open up GitHub here, and I'll pull up our firmware config. So I go to firmware, Marlin, and it would be in the configuration adv.h. And if we search for, I think it's E0. Oh, hang on, my search box went behind another window. E0. Auto fan pin, you can see here we have default ones enabled. So all you would have to do to enable the E0 auto fan pin in our firmware is go to configuration.h. You look for this define E0 auto fan pin -1 and change this to the pin you use. So on the Easy Board V2, that would be the BL Touch pin. And to find out what the BL Touch pin is, I just open up my config here. Sorry, my brain had a brain fart. And if we look here, we actually give you the BL Touch pin in the config. So if you're going to use that and repurpose that, you can. On the Easy Board V2, that's PA2. So if I wanted to use the BL Touch pin for my E auto fan pin, and I hook that MOSFET up there, I would just put PA2 in place of this -1, and you would do this on your firmware side. I haven't coded anything in like this because this is very DIY, but you basically just need a free I/O pin, and the Easy Board V2 actually has quite a few of them on there. There's one on the NeoPixel header, there's one on the Filament sensor port, so basically whatever you don't have in use in terms of I/O pins, you can repurpose it for other purposes. And this goes for any control board, not just the Easy Boards. You know, so if you've got like the old ramps boards or the MKS boards where they have extra I/O pins, I use one in one of my printers with the MKS Gen L to run an extra fan. So you can do that. And like I said, those little IRF 520 boards we have are great for doing an additional control, whether that's a light. You can do that to control a light with Marlin. It supports lights as well. You could do it with fans. You could do it with really anything that's within the realm of the load on those. Now you could also use, if you have a heavier load, you could also use our bigger MOSFETs that we typically sell for use with heated beds. We have our high-amp MOSFET, and those would also work, and those actually have a signal level input. So it's kind of cool. You can do a lot of stuff. You just got to know all the pieces of the puzzle to put together. And once you do it once, it's really not that hard to figure out. So hopefully I made sense of that. So the other way, if you want to just have your control box run all the time, you would disconnect your control box fan from that second fan header. And then you would modify the firmware again in the configuration ADV file. And I'll pull it up really quick. If you want to just flip it around. Me personally, I would just order the board and have both. But if you want to do it with no additional stuff and just software changes, you would have to put the fan pin we use for the controller fan. And I think controller fan is up here. Yeah. So if you look here, if enabled, EasyBoard or EasyBoard V2, and disabled, use controller fan, we're going to go ahead and enable it. If it's an EasyBoard V2, our controller fan pin is PC7. So if you wanted to use that fan output for the hot end fan instead of the controller fan, meaning you're going to wire your control fans to just run all the time. You could technically wire them with the hot end fan, but there could be situations where that they aren't going to kick on when they should kick on. So I would recommend wiring them to be always on powered, or like I said, just leave it alone, add on a second MOSFET for the other fan. But if you wanted to do this, you would just change this PC7 here on line 555 in our firmware, and you would have to compile this locally. You'd have to go ahead and just change this to a -1, which will then make it do nothing. Okay. And then come down here and change this -1 to that PC, I think it's PC7 pin. And then that would then turn on the auto fan control and make that fan port then act as a hot end fan control instead of a controller fan control. And now that I'm like talking through this, I could, like in a future release, code something in that could just, you know, it could be one of the extra features where you just pop it in, and then just pop in a line in your config file, and then my logic has it flip it around, if that makes sense. I'll actually put that on my list. It's not a terrible idea, because if you guys are not aware, we actually have on our support center here, and it'd be under our downloads information, we have extra configuration.h settings in the unified firmware where you basically can paste these into your config file and they'll modify the firmware. So I'm literally going to, there's probably confidential stuff on my to-do list, but I'm going to put a note on here to have an option for the easy boards to be able to flip that functionality if you guys want it, and I'll put in the extra settings. I don't like putting too much stuff in the actual config file, because the more stuff you put in there, people get overwhelmed and they just are like, I don't know what to do, or they start turning things on that they shouldn't. You know, I want this to be more of a, hey, this is a different use case. So, but, you know, if you're proficient enough to run some extra wires, I highly recommend just doing it with the little extra MOSFET. Those little MOSFETs are freaking awesome for adding additional functions to your printer, or just, you know, if you like doing electronics projects, they're awesome to have on hand. Because most of the stuff I do, in terms of like DIY projects, whether it's home automation or just little electronics projects, most of my stuff falls under that 3 amp limit of those little MOSFETs. And it's great to just have something that's already on a PCB. I just bolt it up, put some wires in, they're screw terminals, so it's less soldering. They're just convenient. So here, I'll put in here, code in fan option for easy boards in next release to switch fan 2 from controller fan to E0 auto fan. So, and I'll put that on there, and there we go. It's on my list because I have ADHD, and if I don't write stuff down, I forget it. So if you guys think it's weird that I'm doing this because if I don't do this, I will forget 100%. I will forget. I know myself. I'm 33 years old. Ken's Counts and Couch says, I just flashed a customized version of Marlin 2.1 to my Ender 5 Pro. Baby Step Z isn't working on printing. Any ideas why? Marlin 2.1 is considered a beta, They have their 2.1, and yes, it's technically a release, but that's the one where they're doing the more aggressive testing. So there's probably things that are broken. I would recommend flashing back to like Marlin 2094, which is their latest long-term release. We're on 2093 with our firmware, so you could also just try our firmware. And I will be upgrading our firmware to the 2094 once I get some time to do so and test it. There's no known bugs in our firmware right now, so that's why we're not prioritizing updating it, because when it comes to printer firmware, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. And I genuinely mean that. If there's not a feature or changes that you need to make in your current printer's firmware, and there's no outstanding, like, hey, it doesn't have thermal runaway issues or other bugs that are affecting using the printer, you do not need to update your printer firmware. It's not your computer or any other device that's, on network that needs to have regular security updates. And I have not messed with Marlin 2.1 because it is that kind of bleeding edge of technology. And it's good that they have that, but for me personally, I want my printers to work. And that's why we also stick with the more stable code version for our customers, because I'm sure you guys also want your printers to work. And if you're using our firmware, I can assume you just want stuff to work and you're not, tinkering. So, hey, Scott's in there. So yeah, Scott can confirm. So I like that you guys did that split where you got your two versions. And the funny thing is, it reminds me of Nextcloud. I use Nextcloud for my own personal cloud storage here for my personal stuff, and they have multiple versions in parallel development, and eventually they phase out old versions, so they give you enough time, but they still apply patches to the older versions up to a certain point. And they're like, hey, for example, I just upgraded from version 23 to 24. Oh, great. Hey, let's go ahead and block user on YouTube. I mean, I'm pretty sure everybody's smart enough to not go on those stupid sites. But there we go. Hey, that means we made it. We got Love Chat to XYZ. Yeah, it's probably some scam site anyways. So, but anyways, did it block them? I'm pretty sure it blocked them. We're gonna have to do like a delayed chat on here and have people manually approve stuff. We might be getting big enough to the point where we have to do that. So anyways, firmware, again, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I genuinely mean that. If there's not a feature, like a new feature you want to try out, and you're just updating for the sake of updating and things aren't broken, then don't update. It's that simple. All right, let's see. Questions. My printer thinks I'm out of filament, but I've unhooked the sensor. Anything else I can do? Oh my God. Okay, will the mods actually do something? Because this is annoying. Jesus Christ. All right, well, we got to take care of stupid morons spamming the channel, so bear with me one moment. No one's going to go to your stupid site. There's no one stupid enough to fall for somebody spamming something like that. Like, no one in this channel is dumb enough to actually go and check out your stupid scam site. Like, yeah. So, we're going to report that. All right. Let's see. What is going on here? Okay, anyways. Okay. Apparently we lost a bunch of viewers. It said it dipped down. Something happened. Anyways, where were we at? So yeah, filament sensor. So your filament sensor, I don't know what printer you have. I'm going to assume you have a sensor that's got 3 wires. So typically when a filament sensor is not working, it's because the switch is worn out, and I wouldn't call them a consumable item, but they are a wear item. So basically if you have a sensor and you want to bypass it, you're going, and if disconnecting it is making it still think that it's running out of filament, you would basically want to try either grounding out the signal pin, so connecting the signal pin to the ground pin, or signal pin to the ground pin, and see if that makes it think that the filament is present. If that doesn't, it would be the inverse. You would have to go from the VCC line, which could be 3.3 or 5 volts, depending on what board you have, and bring that connect that over to your signal pin. Basically, depending on what firmware setup is and what switch they used, it's either going to be a high logic when the filament's out or a low logic, so normally open or normally closed. And basically you need to make it think that it's normally open, normally closed. Now, me personally, I would just reflash the printer to disable the filament sensor. Now, if you have a printer that's not an option because they're not providing you with firmware to modify, then you're going to have to do a modification on your own. Now, I might have a filament sensor cable laying around here or something similar. I do, actually. So, I know I have little DuPont jumpers here. Give me 1 second. Do you guys have those little DuPont jumpers? I'm assuming you do. RWWF, do you have little DuPont jumpers from projects like these little guys? These are the female ones, but you can actually do this really easily with male connectors. Super Chat is not showing me special stuff. I need to work on my OBS setup. But anyways, let me grab some male mitts. So on this episode of Tim Shows You How to Do Janky Stuff, this is it. So literally got a male to male. So you got the two male ends here. And most filament sensors, this is the plug you'll have, okay? So on most filament sensors, you will have a black wire, a red wire, and a different color wire for a signal. So let's imagine this is your wire that you unplugged. I would take a multimeter while the printer's on and measure across the two outer pins here and make sure that these are your power and your ground. Typically they are. If it's a Creality one, if it's a Creality sensor, this should be the case. And I am wrong there on that occasion. The two pins are flipped on the Creality sensor. So on my Creality sensor, looking at one of my Ender 6, it's actually red, black, and yellow. Okay, so on a Creality sensor, if you want to ground it out, you would go from the bottom pin to the middle. So basically your signal pin is on the bottom on the Creality, okay? And you can check to see if it's registering triggered by sending the M119 command. And I'll actually show you this right now with my Ender 6. I'll do it right now. Now I won't be able to take my camera over there, but this is a good little demo in terms of troubleshooting. So let me go ahead and pull up my Ender 6 here. And luckily it, like all my other machines, it is on Octoprint, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to kick it on here. And I'll show you the terminal here. So you can verify what the setting is, or what the actual state is, and if you're successfully bypassing or not by connecting to the terminal. So if you don't have Octoprint, plug your printer into your computer and open up a program like Pronterface, or if you have Simplify 3D, you bring a terminal up. But if you do M119, it should show triggered right now because I have Filament in the printer. And you can see that it's showing triggered, okay? So the M119 command is your friend. So I'm going to go unplug the sensor and send it again and see if it shows triggered or open, okay? So the sensor is now disconnected. I'm going to send it again. And you can see this particular printer, if I unplug the sensor, it's going to default to open, okay? Now I can force it to show open, or default to triggered, sorry, when you unplug it, okay? So this one, you could just unplug the sensor and it bypasses it. So basically when it runs out of filament, it pulls it to ground and it'll show open. So I'm going to actually make it show open right now with putting these two wires across the pin. So give me 1 second, I'll show you that. I don't know if I can pull the camera. You're not going to be able to see it. Let's try this, hang on. Okay, so I connected across the 5-volt and the signal pin, and we're showing triggered. Now I'm going to move it to the ground pin, and it should show open then. Hang on. Come on, connect. There we go. M119. And you can see it's showing open now. So I'm pretty sure on Creality, the middle pin is the signal. I think the wiring is just different colors. That's the other thing. There's no consistency with wiring. So you can see we have it open, and I have it jumped across the two. So basically, just figure out what it was. If you notice, I actually plugged it into the wrong one and the board rebooted because I grounded out the 5-volt. Creality's boards are stupid and they don't actually have short circuit protection. But I noticed that and I unplugged it. And luckily, their regulators are fine for short little shorts like that. But anyways, the best thing to do is probe it out. And don't rely on the wire colors, because I genuinely thought that the yellow was still the signal. It's not. Yellow is actually positive on that, and the black center wire is still the signal pin, just like on all their other machines. Our easy out sensors are red, white, and black, and red is actually 5-volt, black is actually ground, and white is signal. So we do actually follow consistency with the colors, but in terms of other machines, don't rely on it, because like clearly it's not the case here. I think on the older CR10s, they had red, yellow, and black, but I don't have one of those cables laying around. It's been a while since I've worked on one of those machines that are stock. So, all right, hopefully that helps. But basically, you want to find out what the signal pin is, what the 5-volt, and what the ground is, and it's either going to need to get pulled up or pulled down to make it think that the filament's there. And then basically, it'll just constantly think that there's filament there and you don't have to worry about it false triggering. So again, if you have access to your firmware source code, just disable your filament sensor in the source code and re-upload it. But if it's not an option, then you're going to have to do a physical means of disabling it. So, all right. Let's see. So Greg says, I have a CR6 SD that's stock. It clogs all the time. Any recommendations on hot ends I can swap into it? I don't like the micro Swiss. So unfortunately, and I talked about this when we did the video on the CR6, because of the proprietary setup with that weird strain gauge they have, there's not many options for you. If micro Swiss has one, that might be your only option. The other thing is if you're getting clogging, you might have a very simple issue where the PTFE fitting has worn out on top of that hot end, and it's allowed a gap to fill between the actual back of the PTFE tube and the back of the nozzle, which is very common with Creality printers because their PTFE fittings are really very bad quality. And I have a model here of the hot end. I can actually show you what that looks like. So this is actually a cutaway view. I can't remember where I got this. It's probably on Thingiverse like everything else, right? So you've got your whole hot end here, and this is your PTFE tube, okay? And this is your heatsink. So I'm going to move this away just so I don't have to keep holding it. So you have your heat break and your PTFE that goes into here. Now, normally the fitting will keep this piece of PTFE, you know, seated up against the back of the nozzle. Well, the problem is when the fitting wears out, which it's very common. Again, Creality uses really crappy quality PTFE fittings. What happens is it works its way out, and you end up with a gap between your nozzle and the PTFE tube. And what happens is this filament doesn't actually stay perfectly molten, and it screws with your extrusion. It can lead to clogs, it can lead to jams, and the thing is, too, it can actually lead to a legitimate clog in your nozzle, because as the filament sits there and it's not getting flowed out, it's crystallizing because it's just getting cooked. So I would, if it was my printer, if you brought that to me and say, hey, Tim, can you fix this? And you don't want to swap the hot end to like a micro Swiss or whatever, I would be taking the tubing out, taking the fitting out. I would put a new piece of PTFE fitting in there, replace the fitting, and then take the nozzle up to about 240 Celsius and put it in while it's hot. So if there is any filament in there, it forces it out. Now, if it's a really bad one, I'll actually take the nozzle out, and I probably would also recommend replacing the nozzle. So the foolproof thing would be, if that is the case where you're getting a little bulge, between this, because of that gap, would be to get a new PTFE tube, new fitting, and then a new nozzle, and just replace all of it. Be done with it in one shot. Because the nice thing is, once the nozzle's out, you can shove the PTFE fitting down in there to shove that bulge out, even if it's crystallized. So that's what I would do. I don't have the CR6 anymore. It was just a printer we decided not to do much with. I think really the only thing we have for it are the replacement power switches, because they were catching on fire, the stock ones, and the Easy Flex plates, which we're phasing out. That printer was kind of a flop. So, all right. So Cody says, when you turn your parts fan on for the Inner 5, didn't they scream at 40% or honestly anything under 100? So they don't. Typically, if the fans scream and like make loud noises, you might, if you got them from us, which I think you do, you might have an older version of the fans. The newer ones we have don't have the auto restart feature, and that is because when you're PWMing a fan, that auto restart feature does not play nicely with speeds lower than 100%. Now, luckily, in our firmware, there is an option that turns on a Marlin setting called the soft PWM, which makes it basically, god damn it, fuck these people. Hey, YouTube, you gotta do a great job of centering stuff you don't like on opinions you don't like, but somehow this shit slips through. Like, reallocate your resources. It's really annoying. Especially when I have the goddamn chat right here. I think we're going to have to go to an approval system. Let me see. Because this is bullshit. I'm actually getting quite irritated. Because they talk about community this and community that, and we're protecting our users, but come on. Here, we're going to do... where is the option to... I'm looking here. Who can send messages? Subscribers. Minimum subscribe time, 5 minutes. There we go. So if you're not a subscriber, you can't chat. So I don't think that's too much to ask. Subscribe and you can chat. You have to be subscribed for a certain amount of time. I do see we're talking about filament sensors. We'll finish with fans. So basically, you probably have fans that just need a slower PWM signal. In our firmware, there's an option called fan_fix. If you turn that on, that usually clears up issues where they're being noisy or they just don't work well. It can't be the same account. We banned the account. Like it's just the same username. They're just making new accounts. So maybe it's a sock puppets coming for me. Let's see. All right. So, Mariah Wheat says, I missed a few live streams, so this might be already answered, but are you going to be putting out any documentation about the Ender 6 and Easy boards? I want to. I just am one person. I don't have enough time, so that's why. Our Discord server is very helpful if you want to embark on that on your own. We do already have DIY firmware to do it. It's not as easy, but it's also not a super involved process. I know there's probably a few people... probably a few people in here running our boards and their Ender 6s. It's not that hard to do. Let's see. Do you need an enclosure? Jonathan's asking, do you need an enclosure to print nylon or carbon fiber? So it depends on what material it is. PLA, carbon fiber, no. But nylons, I definitely highly recommend an enclosure. Now, when I was testing the Nylex from Coex, which we do carry if you guys are looking for some higher end nylons, I did it without an enclosure, but I did also test with an enclosure, and I did get a better result with an enclosure. So the answer is it depends on the brand, because some nylons I printed, you have to have an enclosure. Other nylons I've printed, you don't have to have an enclosure. So, but like with the Nylex anyways, the difference with and without an enclosure was it was just a little bit better of an appearance with the enclosure. I'm assuming due to less warping, but both were very acceptable prints. So, Andrew, what did you... I don't see the super chats. I'm sorry. Where are they? Hang on. I feel bad. I know you said that. And again, I seriously actually have ADHD. So if I forget something, I'm not trying to be a dick. But yeah, I I have hard times keeping up with things sometimes. Let me check my chat bot. Hang on. I gotta have it like pop up for a super chat. That's what I gotta do with OBS is have it pop up with a super chat. Where is it? Hang on. I can't search, but Streamlabs has all the chat history on here. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good thing. That's the thing. I don't know if super chat gets picked up by the bot. Andrew Osmond. I thought it highlights the super chats in here. Yeah, they might not have come out. They might not have been picked up by the bot. I don't know if they do. I don't see it in here. Are you sure it's sent? Yeah, I'm not like a stream expert. I'm doing this for a couple years, but I still don't know everything. What the hell? Hang on. I'm trying to find something. Yeah, I don't see my notifications. There's no notifications on here. I'm sorry, just post it again? Please? Okay. So let's go back here. Andrew, post your question as a normal question with the exclamation point Q, and I'll jump the line. I promise. I can't find it, and I don't want to waste any more stream time. So, Nemo just posted it again. Oh, do you have firmware for the E1 standard set except for the upgraded hot end cable of 300 Celsius? That's my only mod. So if you have that, and I'm assuming you are using the Creality one, yes or no? Okay, thank you guys, I got it. So, if you're using the Creality one, then it should be the same as Ender 3 S1 Pro. And if you're using our firmware with the LCD kit, which I hope you are, because if you have the, well, I guess it really doesn't matter. Hang on, let me process this. So if you have our LCD kit, and you're using the Creality and the one that comes with the Ender 3 Pro S1, you could flash your Ender 3 S1 with the Ender 3 S1 Pro firmware. That's assuming you're using our LCD. If you're using the stock LCD, then you're going to have to change the thermistor value. I think it's number 13 that thermistor uses. And this is why companies just spending some time documenting their stuff is important, because like they should have told you on the product page what thermistor number in Marlin to use. But they're too lazy for that. So let's see. But yeah, I don't know why the super chats don't get highlighted. I don't have that like pop up on here anymore. I used to, but I think super chats stopped popping up when I switched from Streamlabs version of OBS to regular OBS, because I was having issues with Streamlabs. But I need to put that on my list. All right. Okay. 3 Experiments says, Enter 6 inside of Creality 10. I printed 2 rolls of ABS. Now the Raspberry Pi loses connection in the middle of print job. Is it janky PSU, janky mainboard, or both? So, here's the thing. I use my Ender 6 with our top enclosure, which we have these in stock. It could be a multitude of things. I would first take the printer out of the enclosure, because the problem is, like right now, the nice thing about using the top enclosure that we sell for the Ender 6 is the electronics components are not inside the enclosure. So the printer is partially enclosed, and we sell a top piece that makes it a fully enclosed printer. And it still keeps the electronics out. When you put it into the Creality tents, you're putting the entire printer, including all its electronics, inside that enclosure, and those boards are not very good in terms of cooling. So my first thing is take it out of the Creality tent, print some PLA or PETG, the same exact print job, same exact time, see if the connection drops out. If it doesn't, you're probably having a heat issue. If it does, then I would start checking all your connections. One, you should also be using something like the power blockers that we sell on those, because the stock board does try to pull power from the Raspberry Pi. And what happens is if it's trying to pull power because their board's not properly designed to isolate the 5-volt USB from the 5-volt logic rails, it causes instability. So I use the power blocker on mine. I don't have issues with it losing connection. The other thing is it could be your power supply. If it's your power supply, you're going to have to test it and make sure that it's actually putting out stable voltage. These issues are really hard to troubleshoot, but anytime I have issues with printers dropping out, in your case, I would say it could be heat related because you're putting the entire printer in basically a box. But you already have a power blocker, so that's probably not it. Change the USB cable and make sure your Pi is not getting under voltage issues. Change the USB cable and take it out of there, or do one of the other. If you want step by step, what would Tim do? Tim would take it out of the enclosure, run the same print, see if it drops. If it does, I would change the USB cable. And this is all assuming that your Raspberry Pi is getting proper voltage. How do you know it's getting proper voltage? The little red light on the Pi board should be solid red and not flashing. If it's flashing, like one little blip here and there is fine, but if it's like staying off for a second or more and then coming back on, that indicates you have an issue with the power going to the Raspberry Pi itself. It could be a worn out connection. There's a lot of times where I've had just the connection is oxidized and I'll use deoxit on there and clean it out and it's fine then. There's other times where I've had AC adapters or PoE splitters. I use a lot of PoE splitters here to power my Pis that they're worn out. You know, they're cheap adapters and they just wear out at a certain point. So, but usually dropping out, if you've changed the USB cable, you've made sure the Pi is getting proper power and it's still dropping out, it could just be that board is on its way out. If you got another power supply, basically another 350 watt 24 volt power supply, maybe you got an Ender 3 laying around, switch the power supplies and see if the issue goes away. If it does, you probably have a power supply issue, but there's no easy this is the problem. You're gonna have to troubleshoot and kind of use a process elimination to figure out what's going on. I also saw when we were talking about the filament sensor, Guitarman says M412S0 will disable the filament runout sensor. That's assuming that he has firmware that supports it. The stock Creality firmware does not support that. Our firmware supports that. But again, if he's running our firmware or another firmware that he's compiled, he could just disable it. So I'm assuming that if he was asking, he probably has a printer that doesn't have that option. Like these Anycubic Chiron printers or the Cobras, I think the Cobra and the Viper, these ones that are using these knockoff, cheap, I shouldn't call them knockoffs, they're just cheap Chinese ARM chips. They still haven't, they still haven't released source code for it. So you don't have that as an option. All right. Kevin Pop, does your house air conditioner 3D print stuff upgrade? No, but it lets me not be grumpy. I hate being hot. Let's see. I don't know what enclosure you're talking about, JT, but the one that's on the floor is for my 5 Plus. That's from 3D Upfitters. I'm assuming you mean branded. That's literally IKEA cabinets, and I have a vinyl decal on it. I will not build those again. That was my first enclosure I ever built. It works, but oh my God, it was expensive. It was more expensive than buying just a pre-built enclosure, like even a knockdown enclosure, and it was a lot of work. So I cannot recommend it. But, if you got some old cabinets laying around, go for it. But this was before, I could go and buy a full enclosure for an Ender 3. We use the printed solid enclosures for our Ender 3s out in our print farm. And then if you have an Ender 6, we literally sell the top piece there. So if you guys got an Ender 6 and you want to be able to print high temp stuff, we have that. It's under $200 right now. So, all right. So, Blaze B3OC, have you seen the No Clogger 3D print tool? What are your thoughts? I feel like people are going to find out what a 1.75 nozzle looks like. The No Clogger 3D print tool. How am I just finding out? Were you like saving this? Saving this for me? Let's see. Is the handle printed? It looks like the handle is printed. This is a very cringy video. It's a neat idea. The problem is if you have a blockage in the nozzle, it might end up making things worse or not working if the blockage is bad enough. It's a neat idea. I'd be willing to try it and see how it is. I'm kind of skeptical, but it's literally just a long rod with a pointed tip to shove down into your nozzle. The only thing is some nozzles, especially cheap ones, they don't have this conical shape. The V6 style do. The stuff we sell does, but not all nozzles will have this. Also, there are some nozzles, some of the cheaper nozzles I've seen, they're actually two pieces, so you can actually push the tip of the nozzle out. I mean, I'd try it out. What are they asking for? They're asking $20 for it. I mean, it's not cheap, but I'm just trying to think, like, if you got a really bad clog, is that actually going to be enough to force into the hot end? Like, I don't know. I've never heard of it. And this is on Etsy. Let's see what the reviews are. Like, I tried hex keys, paper clips. I mean, there's a lot of good reviews. I mean, I'd say, reviews for this item. There's only 15 for this item. Reviews for the shop. I've never heard of this company. I think they print stuff. So this might have been something they came up with themselves to alleviate their issues. I'd be interested. I mean, $20. It's not going to break the bank. I'd be interested. I'll ask Sean. Why not just press the button? Okay. Anyways, we're getting sidetracked. Yeah, I will. I'm interested in this. This is literally. Hang on. Hold up. This is a 3D printed handle. Is this literally just like a flexi-ish rod that they ground the tip off and then put a 3D printed handle on? I thought this was actually like an injection molded thing. Okay, I'm going to be on a mission. I'm going to make my own. How's that? We'll have the easy no clog. I don't know if it'll actually work. But looking at this, like, this is literally a handle. This could be modeled up in Fusion pretty quick. I have an angle grinder here. Or actually I have a bench grinder. This wouldn't be that hard to make. Oh my god! It's not coat hanger. Do you know what this is? I'm willing to bet this is the stuff they use for drop ceilings, which I have a bunch of it downstairs. Do you guys want to bet that this is just stuff for drop ceilings? Because they're showing it's flexible. Okay. Tim is going to embark on a DIY project. I thought this was an injection mold and handle. And at that point, yeah, I'll pay $20, but this is something they're literally making by hand. I feel a DIY project coming on. Yeah. Called the Easy Poker. I'm going to poke your tip. All right. I mean, if it works, it works. You can't argue with results, but I don't know. But I definitely feel like I could DIY this fairly cheap. Like, what would that actually cost? That's actually pretty good margin. So if it's got a length of that, you got what? You print the handle. Maybe they have it so they put it in and it's like bent in there so you can't pull it out. Like, I'm just thinking how I would design it. And then like they're just cutting these lengths and grinding them out. That's not that hard to make. But $20 is not terrible. Give it a shot if you're curious. But I kind of want to make my own just because literally they're 3D printing it. So I'm kind of like, okay, if they can do it, I can do it. All right, how's the Flights Mosquito working? It's been fine. I did a couple of test prints, and it's printing, and it's printing great, and the flow rate's good. So I can't complain. I need to get this back up here, and I'm going to have to start running some ABS parts. So I can't complain. It works great as advertised. Paul Texan asked on the restock ETA for the 8mm Easy ABL. Oh, sorry. Oh, we're 15 minutes past. I'm gonna wrap this up in a bit, so please don't put anything else in chat. I'm gonna go through the questions pretty quick, but I think I'm checking here. I had gotten pictures from the supplier for like proofs. I'm playing around with some other things right now. But I think they're getting ready to ship us the 8s. They said next weekend. That was on the 15th, so they're probably shipping this weekend. I'll follow up with them. So, anyways, soon I do have. I don't know if anybody be interested. If you're in a hurry, this is what I ended up using on my 5 Plus here during the stream. I have some of our prototypes here with the ends on them. The difference between these and the retail units. These are not the shielded cable. Now, if you have a printer that's built correctly and you don't have interference, these work fine. I'm actually getting like 0.002 millimeters of accuracy on the M48, even without the shielded cable. So message me on Discord if you want one of these. These would be like one-off things. I have a bunch of the prototypes, and like I said, the only difference between these and the retail ones is you don't have the shielded cable because I wasn't able to get them on such short notice. So, but I'd assume in a couple weeks we'll have them. But I literally have like 3 or 4 of them here. And I use the prototype stuff on mine because if it works, it works. I'm not going to take retail product away from people, especially on stuff that we're low on stock on or out of. But yeah, send me a message on Discord. So, all right. I don't have a picture of the 5 Plus printing. You know what? I'll record something later. Carlos Alonso, I have an EasyBoard V2. How can I add an emergency stop button without using Arduino? It's called the power switch. I don't think Marlin has an emergency stop feature. I haven't looked. They might. But if they do, again, we were talking about I/O pins earlier in the stream. You could, if Marlin has an emergency stop feature, you could do that. But honestly, if you want an emergency stop, I would just do it as simple as possible. I mean, go online. I'm assuming you can find an e-stop button that will literally just cut the AC power. Like literally a cord you can put in line with your AC power and cut it. Or just turn your power switch off. If something's really going bad with my printer, I just cut the AC power. So, if you're looking for a little more insurance too, we do have the easy plugs and those are in stock. If you use that with plus Octoprint, if your printer enters an error state, you can have the Octopi setup automatically kill the printer with the easy plug. And I have them on all my machines here. They're fantastic. All right, I'm gonna see if there's any other quick questions to answer here. Thread Experiment says, you see Souls make an Ender 5 clone the SVO5? I did not, but thanks for the heads up. We'll put that on our radar. Cody Todd's asking about the Crowley Sprite extruder add-on to Ender 3 V2. I'm switching over to it and I want your thoughts on it. I have that comes stock on the Ender 3 S1 Pro or Ender 3 S1. It's nice. I think the price is decent on their setup. If you want something that's like, just throw it on there, you can do that. If you want something a little more involved, we do have our multi-mount system where you can do a direct drive setup and have a little more flexibility. The problem with the Crowley Sprite extruder is you're locked into their heat block, their heat break. I think the nozzles are standard, but it's all proprietary. So if you can't get parts for it, it's kind of a pain in the ass. I personally wouldn't put one on one of my machines. I'd rather do something that's more DIY, like our multi-mount system where do a direct drive with the tough extruder on top of a groove mount hot end. So, the SKL is asking, you have a V6 heat block that takes the M3 base thermistor. So those M3 base thermistors are literally somebody taking an M3 screw stud and gluing a thermistor, the glass ones, into it. That's it. I've tested those. We don't sell them because they're actually not very accurate because it's no longer inside the heat block. I don't recommend them. If you want something that's a little easier to handle and not deal with the glass bulbs, go with the new cartridge type that we have. So if you have a V, I'm assuming you have a V6, even if you didn't get a V6 from us, the V1 to V2 upgrade kits that we sell that replace the block and come with the new cartridge thermistors will work on any brand V6 hot end as long as it's the M6 threading on the end of the heat break. And if most V6 and V6 clones will be the M6 threading on there. So if you have N6 threading on your V6 style hot end, the V1 to V2 kit we have will work. So you can switch over the cartridge type ones, and then you don't have to worry about using those little stud ones that are going to run a little bit cooler. So basically the problem is those little ones that are glued into the stud, because they're not inside the heater block and they're exposed to the air, they're going to read slightly colder than the actual temperature. So you usually then have to compensate by cranking the temperature up. So not a fan of them. All right. Is there a heat block for the Corellia hot that will take the high temp thermistor and heater cartridge? So you could, and I've done this before in a pinch, you could actually take, because the Creality heat break is a V6 heat break, you could actually put the V6 block on a Creality hot end. You would also need a V6 nozzle because the nozzle would then change. So the V6 nozzle is slightly longer than the MK8 nozzle the stock hot end was. So you could actually use that little upgrade kit we have for the V1 to V2 and use that to get the higher temp thermistors. The only thing is, because the nozzle length is longer, you're going to have your nozzle hanging down a couple millimeters lower than the stock one. So if you have a system that allows you to adjust the fan ducts, it's not really a problem. But I don't know of one. I think the only real option that's a stock length, but it's expensive, would be like the Slice Copperhead block, I think it is. They make a block that goes onto the Creality hot end. So you reuse the heatsink and the heat break, and I believe it's the block and then the V6 style nozzle. And they might have a different heat break. I'm gonna look it up on their site. I think they have a retrofit kit. But I have put a V6 block on a Creality hot end. It just makes the nozzle sit a little lower. I didn't even think of that application for the V1 to V2 kit we have. The main thing is you're making sure your cooling fan ducts sit low enough, and if you have an ABL sensor, moving it down. Let's see. I think they have a conversion kit. Let's see here. Ender 3. Looking here. Copperhead heat breaks. No, I want the blocks. I think it's the Copperhead. I could be remembering something incorrectly. Let's see here. Because I think you can replace this block. Oh my God. I really don't like their website, to be completely honest. Their website's very hard to navigate, in my opinion. Okay, I think this is what I'm talking about. So it's actually on the hot end page. So C to E, which is this. Okay, so this is $56. So this is what I was thinking. So this would replace it, your heat break and your nozzle and heater block. So this is $56.99 without any nozzle, without any heater. You can reuse your heater, and without any thermistor. So if this was me personally, and I was a customer, and I didn't care about my nozzle hanging down a little bit lower, I'd probably go with putting the V6 on there, the V6 block. But if you don't care about the extra price, this is what I was thinking, where it's a retrofit kit. So, but yeah. But like I said, the main thing is like our V1 to V2 kit, you can put it on a Creality hot end. You would just need to switch over to V6 nozzles, and it's going to hang down a couple millimeters lower. So if you have fan ducts or mounts that are designed like perfectly where it's going to blow it across the nozzle, you might have to adjust them. If you can't adjust them, then that's the problem. But this Copperhead, I believe, is a drop-in replacement for the stock block and the stock block and the stock heat break. So, yeah, that's another thing. If your ducts are right up on there, you could end up in a position where the heater block is hitting the ducts, but it's only, I think it's like a 3 millimeter difference. It's basically the difference of the length of an MK8 versus MK6 nozzle. If you guys are not familiar with those, we do have like a picture of the different nozzle styles on here. So like, here's a V6 nozzle, here's an MK8 nozzle. These are all taken next to each other. So you can see we've got like what? There's like 1, 2, 3, 4 threads here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So basically the V6 has got like one and a half more lengths of thread. So it's close, but yeah, it'll put it down a little bit further. So anyways, let's get off that. I focused on that question. Let's see if there's any other quick question before I wrap this up. People are asking, I see people asking about ABS. ABS, you need to have an enclosure. I see someone asking about, do I use a part fan when printing ABS in an enclosure? I actually do. I've actually been playing around with that more. Anywhere, depending on the cooling setup, anywhere from 20 to 50%. You know, if I've got a big beefy cooling setup, like on the 5 Plus here, I have dual 50-15s, I'll probably run that closer to 20%. On a single fan setup, I usually run anywhere from 30 to 40, sometimes even 50. Basically run a bunch of test prints and see what works for you. So I'm sorry I didn't get everybody's questions. We're almost a half hour. I'll try to keep these to an hour. So, but anyways, all right, CAG 3D, this will be the last one. He said, are cooling mods for the Creality printers important, or would the stock head-end setup be sufficient? So the stock hot-end setup on most Creality printers sucks. It's usually single-sided, and I say usually because there are printers that have dual-sided, and those do better. In general, if your printer has a single-side cooling fan, going to a dual-side one, whether that's 2 separate fans and a duct for each fan, or it's one fan with a split duct, is always going to give you better results than a single-sided fan. So in general, because most Creality's printers are single-side part cooling, yes, it will be a benefit. And I do think doing those kind of upgrades is beneficial. Most of my printers, if not all of them, have upgrades to the stock cooling setup. My Ender 3, my Ender 3S1, my Big Bertha printer, that's got a dual split. My 6 has got a dual split. My 5 Plus has got dual 50-15s. This is a custom built printer, and this has, it's technically a single-sided because it doesn't wrap all the way around, but it's not just cooling from one side. It's kind of like a U shape around it, like a horseshoe. So yes, I do think it's worth upgrading as if you have a single-sided printer. If you have one that's got two, a fan on each side with a duct, like the Ender 3 Max has two 4010 blower fans, just upgrading those to fans that push more air, which we do actually carry, will yield you better results, but they also won't yield you better results than upgrading that whole system to something that uses like a 50-15 fan. 50-15 fans are my go-to. It's a lot of other people's go-tos for aftermarket layer fan setups because they just move a lot of air. Even one fan moves a ton of air. So, and we also carry those too, and we only carry those in a ball bearing variety so they actually last long. So with that, I appreciate you guys that all stopped by. Guys and girl, I know my channel analytics, there's like, it's like 0.01% women that watch this. But anyways, I think it is time though for the ceremonial dingo stick because somebody's been a good boy. Somebody's been quiet all stream. We haven't been annoying even in the slightest. Yeah, we had a busy day. We had doggo friends over yesterday, and we got to throw the ball. Do you like the ball? Are you tired? You tired? Can you speak? Rose, come here. Come here. Sit. Sit. Come here. You gotta come here. He's sitting all the way over here. Come here. Come here. My light box is annoying. Touch. Sit. Shake. He's trying to sit off screen. He is tired. All right, anyways, here's your dingo stick. Enjoy your treat, doggo. So, anyways, like he's going to go back to his bed. He is tired. So, anyways, if I didn't get your question, I apologize. I try to keep these to an hour, and we are 30 minutes past that. If you guys do want to chat about printers, go to our Discord server at discord.th3dstudio.com. There's literally thousands of people in there, and it's a very active community. If you are a YouTube member and you have Discord and you're in our server, make sure to connect your YouTube account you use to be a YouTube member to Discord, and you'll get access to the VIP section. There's a section in there that only people with the Cult of TH3D level sponsorship on this channel here have access to, and I do hang out in there. There's also a lounge area too, where it's basically our most dedicated and active people. Really good conversations, just kind of shoot the shit and talk shop. So anyways, I will talk to you guys later. I'll see you on the next one. If you guys haven't already signed up for our email notifications, go in the description and click the YouTube notifications link, and we will send you out an email 15 to 30 minutes before we go live on stream. So if YouTube notifications don't work, which we all know they don't, you'll get an email reminder. So with that, I hope you guys have a great week, and as always, happy printing. I'll see you on the next one.